Welcome to the Dickinson College Expert Show, where we take a few minutes to connect you with experts and insight from Dickinson College. I'm Craig Lane. Thanks so much for being with us. We're joined today by Dr. Michelle Patterson Ford, Chair of the Psychology Department, Senior Lecturer in Psychology, and Licensed Psychologist. Dr. Ford, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We're headed into a very stressful time of year. As you know, the holiday season is upon us. So this can be a time for stress. It can be a time for conflict. And that's why we're turning to you for some helpful tips today. So thanks again. Let's start by talking about this. It's a busy time of year, but is it natural to be stressed? And should we maybe take some comfort in that?
Absolutely. I think, we have our everyday stresses that we deal with all the time anyways, and then we add in sort of the holiday stress that's associated with that. And research really shows that at this time of year, people's stress goes up 30 to 60%. So we're expected to kind of be more stressed at this time of year. We're worried about finances, we're worried about social obligations, travel, seeing family, which can be a positive thing, but sometimes a stressful thing. So there's a lot more on our plate than we would normally be dealing with. And it is helpful to know that we're not alone in that reframing it in that way sort of helps us feel like kind of we're all in this together and feeling like we can manage this if we understand that we're not alone in it, that other people are experiencing the same things.
Wow. So yeah, a lot on our plates, a lot to do. Are there some specific things like boundary setting that people can do? What can we do to maybe take a step back and better prepare ourselves for the busyness of this season?
Yeah, I think boundary setting, I always kind of refer to it as boundary setting and escape plans. So coming up with a couple of things to sort of manage the stress that we might be dealing with. So self-care to me is a boundary in and of itself. So making sure that we're kind of doing the basics to take care of ourselves in this stressful time. When we're under extra stress, we're automatically maybe not eating as well or sleeping as well as we used to. So trying to take some steps to make sure that we're doing what I call the basics, right? Eating, sleeping, maybe getting some exercise in, making sure we're hydrating, doing those sorts of things. So starting with that and then thinking about managing our time. And protecting our time, really, not just managing it, but saying, really what I don't want to do is say yes to something that's going to compromise my well-being. And so that's kind of where the escape routes come in, either having strategies for saying I'm only going to spend so much time, at this particular event because I need to get home and sleep, or this event is stressful for me, so I'm only going to be there for so long, or strategies for saying, no, sorry, I'm not able to do that. I apologize. I hope you have a great time. But either finding ways to say no at the beginning or to be able to exit when you need to exit so that you're kind of managing your time and protecting yourself really ultimately at the end.
It sounds like a lot of this comes down to planning, right? Making sure you have time or making sure you have a plan for taking care of yourself, really.
Exactly.
Do you push back on the notion that maybe that's selfish?
I do push back on that. I think, too, because it's okay for us to take care of ourselves and prioritize ourselves. And I think we're just as important as the people around us. And so if we can plan ahead for taking care of ourselves, then we're actually likely to be treating the people around us a little bit better because we feel more centered. We feel in a better space to be present when we're participating in the activities we're participating in. So I think in this situation, it's okay to be a little bit selfish because sort of the idea of putting our mask on first, then enables us maybe to help someone else who might be struggling.
So the old airplane analogy, right? When the oxygen mask deploys, they say put it on first
right.
and then help the people
right.
next to you.
Right, because if you can't breathe, you're not helping anybody else out, right?
Oh my goodness,
yeah.
Okay, so this is some really basic stuff, but we get so busy we forget. Eat well, exercise, stick to some of those routines, and be present for the people around you. That's a nice way to point out that you are actually able to help your loved ones better when you're taking care of yourself.
Exactly.
Interesting, really interesting. So, we talk about loved ones. Family gatherings are an essential part of this season,
yes,
but that can bring a lot of joy. It can bring a lot of stress. It can bring sadness sometimes.
Right. It can bring all of it, right?
All of it. How do we avoid maybe some of the negative things that can happen in a family situation? Are there strategies to cope with that?
Definitely. I think some of the same strategies apply. So planning ahead, kind of knowing what situations might crop up when you're with family, because we tend to know family pretty well. And really the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So we can maybe predict from previous experiences what might come up in a family situation and then plan for how to manage that. And so then the boundaries come in again and sort of the escape routes come in again. So this idea of saying, what am I willing to do and not do in this situation, and how can I exit an uncomfortable situation? And I always talk about bathrooms being a great exit strategy because people don't often follow you to the bathroom. And so if you're in an uncomfortable situation where the conversation is getting maybe heated, you can say, you know what, I'm just going to exit and head to the bathroom for a second. And whether you need to go or not, you can at least take a quiet moment, center yourself, clear your head a little bit, and then either re-enter the situation or maybe decide, to go somewhere else in the house, go turn a TV on or something like that. So I think this idea of knowing what might be triggering for you and coming up with some plans for how to manage that as well, and communicating around that. So I like the concept of, what I tend to call pre-communicating. So maybe contacting trusted family members and saying, hey, I'm worried the situation might come up. Can you help me navigate it? Or if this situation does come up, this is what I'm going to do. And I just wanted to let you know about that beforehand.
So a step beyond just, I'm going to bring the stuffing, you bring the mashed potatoes.
Yes.
You're talking about what could possibly go down.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
actually. And then helping out, right, with the stuffing and the mashed
Right, of
potatoes,
course, yeah.
helping out your fellow family members. But thinking about, as people are, conversation around the table, especially thinking about Thanksgiving or other holiday gatherings, tends to bring up a lot of interesting issues that can be really sort of joyful and humorous, but can also be stressful for people. So just kind of maybe knowing what your triggers are and planning ahead for how to take care of yourself in those situations so that you can, like I said, exit a situation that's uncomfortable, or that you don't maybe get heated when that's not really something that you're wanting to do at a holiday gathering of some sort.
Do folks maybe come to you and talk about regrets they have?
People come and talk about a lot of things. So one, planning for, I have to go to this, I quote unquote have to go to this holiday thing that I'm really strung out about and I don't know how to manage it. So planning in advance, but then also feeling like I had this experience with family and it didn't really meet my expectations, or I didn't like the way I handled something, and now what do I do? And finding ways to repair, right? Maybe some things that went wrong over the holiday season as well.
That's great. It sounds like you have a lot of strategies that are just really good for being human, right?
Right.
Making those connections, and I want to say trying to be authentic, but also like knowing, it sounds like you need to know a lot about yourself.
Yes.
How do people dial into that, especially when they might be thinking about, oh, I have to see this family member that I don't get along with, or I've got to take care of my kids or whatever. Like, how do you sort of focus inward so that you're prepared for this situation?
Right. So we call that just checking in, right? So oftentimes when we know that someone is struggling in some way, we'll check in with them. How are you? Everything going okay? Is there anything I can do? And so I think it's just as helpful to check in with ourselves periodically, especially in stressful situations. Like, how am I doing right now? What do I need in this moment? If you're managing lots of children or you're managing lots of cooking or something like that, can I get away for a couple minutes and just take a breath, right? Can I step outside for a second? So checking in and doing sort of like a quick assessment of how am I feeling? What am I doing? What do I need right now? And how can I communicate those things?
How important is a sense of connection at this time of year with your family, with your friends? Is it possible that we're doing too much, or can maybe reaching out to more people actually be a good thing?
Right. I mean, I think connection is, one, always important, and I think there's this extra pressure for connection around the holidays. Sometimes, communicated by people that we know, but sometimes definitely through the media, various forms of either, visual media or social media, things like that. So I think connection is always important, but I think we all have different needs for connection and different ways of, kind of garnering connection. And so this can be a really lonely time for people, especially if they feel like like they don't have the types of connections that they want, or they're grieving the loss of different aspects of their life or family members or things like that. And so I think it is important to have connection, but that we can get that in different ways. It doesn't always have to be in kind of the should ways that we think connection happens. And so I think there are some, preconceived notions about how holidays are supposed to go, but I think sometimes there are ways to get connections in some of the smaller moments that can help us kind of make it through some of the larger moments if they feel like the larger moments aren't necessarily what works for them.
Wow, lots of great stuff. Is there one thing, maybe above all else, that just you want people to take away, knowing as we head into this like string of crazy weeks here?
Right. I think communication is a big one, right? Saying, what it is, checking in, saying is what it is that you need and how you can sort of manage sort of the demands of your day, and just kind of communicating with other people about that. I think that also facilitates other people then communicating with you as well. Like if you have the ability to ask for what you need, then maybe I can also ask for what I need, and we can have a conversation around that. And then it makes us feel more connected, number one, but have a better experience around the holidays as well. So I think if I could do two things, I would
Sure.
say checking in and communication.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And there might be a element of honesty here too, where you have to be honest with yourself, you have to be honest with others. Sometimes people can say too much honesty can be brutal. Is there a line there?
I think there's a line.
Yeah.
I think, we want to be sensitive to how the message is going to be received. So it's important to communicate what's going on for you. It's really hard for people to sort of argue what your feelings are. So communicating using what we call I statements, right? I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now, and I need, whatever it is that someone may need, but not necessarily saying you this and you that, right? So I think it's important to communicate using more I statements and being sensitive to how the message may be received, and being open that maybe we didn't always communicate it effectively, and trying to make some of those repairs when we feel like, well, that didn't land like I expected it to. So communicating all the way through.
Right. Take care of yourself, take care of others.
Right.
Those open lines of communication.
Mm-hmm.
What have I not asked you that you think is really important for people to know?
I think it's okay to not participate if it doesn't feel like it's something. I feel like there's all this pressure to participate at this time of year. Right. And if you want to participate, hopefully some of these strategies help you to do so successfully and, without really compromising your well-being. But I think it's easy to forget that it's actually okay to say, this isn't really, what works for me, and, to say no as well. And so I think, we've come up with strategies for how to do things, but I think it's also good to say, no, it's okay for me not to do some of these things if they're not working for me.
Dr. Ford, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Michelle Patterson Ford is the chair of the Dickinson College Psychology Department. I'm Craig Lane. Thanks so much for watching the Dickinson College Expert Show. You can see more episodes at dickinson.edu/expert show.